Hey entrepreneurs, today I'm going to share with you a 3-step process to go from lack of certainty that's slowing you down, because we all know that the more certainty you have about exactly what you need to do to get to a goal, the faster you work, it increases your speed. So we're going to go through 3 steps that take you from uncertain and slow to making progress and moving fast. So what I'm going to do is first contrast 2 different planning methods. One that is used by NASA engineers when they're planning for a rocket launch, for example, is called critical path. And that's where you establish each of the critical milestones that have to be reached by certain dates, or else if any of those critical milestones are missed, then the launch date has to be pushed back by at least a day. If one of those things is 1 day late, then the launch date has to be pushed back. So those are critical path items, the things that have to get done, because if you've ever looked at a Gantt chart is designed to show you, like, we have to finish this thing first before we can even start on the second thing. And then that second thing's going to take 2 weeks, which means then we can start this third part. And there's other things that can be overlapping. So on your Gantt chart, you might see some aspects of the project are being accomplished at the same time. So those things that can't overlap on a Gantt chart, those are part of a critical path, meaning we have to follow this path to get there. Another way to talk about that, some people use the term target mapping. And that's kind of a simplified strategy where you say, all right, I'm a little confused about how to get to my goal. So let's start at the end. The end result that I want to get to is, let's say I want to have a finished book written, and then I work backwards from there. Okay, to have a finished book, then I need to have something written, or I need it to be edited. And what you do is you work backwards to where you are, and you see that, okay, what I'm doing is I'm mapping the path to that target by working backwards. The problem is when you don't know how you're going to get there. Let's say you're launching a new product with a partner that you've never worked with before. That partnership is unknown, who's going to do what exactly. And there's a lot of developing MVP products and versions of things to test, and that data is going to then inform which direction you go. And that can slow you down a lot because you just don't know how can we even start to plan it. And so in that situation, your constraint, the bottleneck to your progress, is actually a question mark that sits there somewhere on that path that you're drawing to get to your goal. There's this question mark and then we could go one of these 5 ways and we don't know. And so that can often slow us down. So your goal then is to get to that question mark and solve it as quickly as possible. One of the things I do in the one-on-one coaching I do with entrepreneurs is that we strategize ways to sort of cheat and find out what is behind that question mark faster. But if you can't do that, if you haven't discovered a method for accomplishing that, one of the methods I like, this 3-step process, is called ABZ. It's the ABZ, not C. Z is in zebra, not as in cat. The ABZ method. And what that means is you say A is where I am now. That's my starting point. Z is where I want to get to. And B is just the very next step. It's just the very next thing that I'm trying to accomplish right now that I know I have to do that's going to move me in the right direction, at least, so that I can one day get to Z. So you might think of it as Travis Sago calls it driving in the fog. You know, if you're driving in the fog, you can't see, a mile down the road, whether there's a stop sign or there's a cow wandering into the road or whatever. You can just see 15 feet in front of you. So you slowly drive those 15 feet, right? Once you've driven 15 feet, now you can see another 15 feet in front of you. And so you drive that 15 feet. And of course, it just keeps extending. So you might also think about this method as kind of like what you'd do if you got lost in a forest. And you could see a distant mountain and you know that's the ski lodge where your car is parked and your buddies are hanging out. But you don't really know how to get there. There might be a stream you can't cross. There might be a cliff that's too steep to climb down. And so what you do is you pick a spot that's in the general right direction of that Z, the mountain representing Z, your ultimate goal, the outcome you're trying to get to. But you pick a tree that is within your field of vision. You say, I'm going to walk toward that tree. And this is actually a known survival strategy to keep you from walking in circles. For whatever strange reason, apparently humans gradually walk in a large circle if we're left to just walk through woods and we don't have reference points. That would be especially true if you can't see the sun or the stars because the trees are so thick. And so what you want to do is pick that one tree, walk to it. Once you get there, then look around and say, okay, now I'm going to pick a new target. So that's the equivalent of using this ABZ strategy. It reduces the feeling of I have to figure it all out first before I go there. Now, ideally, you are going to know the full path to get there, but sometimes you're not going to be able to. So this strategy, please only use this strategy to increase your productivity when there's not a clear, good way to say, well, we're going to create a full map of how to get there, because it is better if the further you can look into the future, the richer your mental map of the future, the more likely you are to achieve your goals, because you can sidestep the hurdles. You can see the hurdles, the pitfalls before you even get to them. And that's what allows people to accelerate their goals. You can also see the shortcuts. The richer your mental map is of the future, the more pieces of that you understand how everything's going to fall together, the better. But to reference one person I've been studying with, Dan Nicholson, author of Rigging the Game, which is a book you should check out on Amazon if you haven't seen it. It's really good. And I've gone through a training for the past 4 months. I've been training with Dan on some of the concepts you can find in that book. And one of the things Dan says is that every time, if you're trying to design a plan to get from point A to point B, if you insist that you have to follow a certain set sequence, the more pieces of that process you lock in and say, this has to go this way so that we can get to the next part, and this has to go that way. Every time you add an element like that, that you say, we insist that it has to be this way, you actually reduce the odds that you're going to get there. In the same way that if you took any system and it had varying levels of reliability, so you had, let's say, 5 parts of a system, and 3 of them had 100% reliability, meaning that without fail, they always follow through, but one of them had 90% reliability and another one had 70% reliability. What happens then is if you multiply 100 times 100 times 100 times 70 times 90, you're going to get a number much smaller than 100, right? So whatever is the more things you add to that list, anything that has even 99% reliability decreases the total reliability of the system. And it's the same with planning. If you insist that when we get to step B, then the only path forward from there is step C, you've actually reduced the odds that your plan is going to work. And that's why sometimes you have to bring this flexibility in and use more of an ABC model when there's a lot of unknowns. Now, planning is designed to be flexible. Generally speaking, entrepreneurs understand is that you create a plan because it creates the momentum, it helps you to enrich your mental map, but then you have to adjust it. Just like a general creates a battle plan, but then as he sees how things are evolving, he doesn't say, nope, I see that we're going to lose with our plan, but we're going to sit back and let this roll out because that's the way I planned it. You're of course going to adapt to the changing circumstances. Just acknowledging that helps you to become more productive. So here's your challenge. For this week, I want you to just notice anytime you feel an urge to procrastinate because something feels overwhelming. You're not even sure how to accomplish a big goal that's in the distant future. Or anytime where you feel like this question mark is preventing you from moving forward and you're very tempted to just do nothing for a long time because you don't know how to make progress. If that happens to you, pull out this mental tool, this framework, the ABZ framework. Think, okay, where am I now? What is my goal? What would be just the very next step? That driving in the fog process will unlock for you a clear next step, and you just keep doing that next step until at some point you'll be able to see a more full picture. Hope that's useful to you. I'll see you again next week.